For many people, Deandre Ayton's short career has been defined by one thing, and one thing only: where he was taken in the draft. The truth is, defining players by their draft position has always been dumb. In order to understand who Deandre Ayton is and who he can be, we need to talk about the things he can control, and that's the value he brings on the court, and to an extent, how what he does off the court affects that. My name is Mike, and I'm here with Sam. Sam, say hi.
What's up, guys?
We're going to talk about what it would take for Deandre Ayton to solidify himself as not only one of the best centers in the league, but hopefully one of the best players in the league. First, let's talk about offense. Deandre Ayton came into the league and immediately established himself as one of the better offensive centers. His size and athleticism allowed him to be one of the best pick and roll finishers. He uses that athleticism to get above the rim to catch lobs and get up and down the court quickly. As a pick and roll finisher, he's ranked in the 64th percentile at 1.16 points per possession in year 2, up from the 59th percentile in year 1. This was obviously aided by the addition of a legitimate point guard in Ricky Rubio, and now he's playing with an NBA legend and 10-time All-Star Chris Paul. He's a good screen setter and has good hands, and his fluidity transferred well to the NBA. Although his most effective skill is as a pick and roll finisher, he's also showed some skill in shooting. He's been flirting with a three-point shot recently, but before that, he's displayed some touch from the mid-range and has a particularly pretty turnaround shot from the baseline when posting up. One of his underrated offensive skills is offensive rebounding. In his second year, Deandre ranked 4th in the NBA in offensive rebounding at 3.9 per game, and 5th in contested offensive rebounds at 2.8 per game. And on putbacks, he's averaging 1.24 points per possession for his career. The ability to score without plays being run for you is a vital skill, and there's no question he can be close to the best in the NBA at offensive rebounding. Overall, offensively, he's no superstar, being that 74% of his shots were assisted last season, so he's not quite a guy you can build an offense around, but what he's good at, he can likely be elite at. And with those specific skills, he can be a vital cog in a top offense in the NBA. The conversation on Deandre Ayton's offensive improvement is fascinating in this specific season, as his development has now been placed in fast forward with the addition of Chris Paul. The Suns have gone from a team competing for the last playoff spot to a team that has to take the idea of winning a playoff series seriously. The good news is, his skill set complements Chris Paul's perfectly, and if you factor in the shooting that the Suns added, they could be one of the better offensive teams in the NBA. The key is now for Ayton to understand his role within that. Deandre Ayton shot 568 shots in 2019-20, and 123 of them were mid-range shots. For the team to succeed, and for Ayton to succeed, the efficiency of his shots is important. Those mid-range shots he shot at a 40% rate. At that rate, it's essentially as valuable as a 27% three-point shot in points per possession. Plus, he's sharing the court with two of the best mid-range shooters in the game in Booker and Paul. His pick-and-roll possessions need to increase. He needs to commit to rolling hard to the rim and be prepared to catch lobs on every possession. That commitment means understanding that rolling to the rim is as much about getting perimeter guys open as it is about him scoring. On our podcast, we've dubbed those plays roll assists. They may not show up in the box score, but you can see when his vertical gravity makes the defense collapse and gets shooters open. Sharing the floor with those mid-range shooters now also means cutting out those shots in favor of three-point shooting as well. The pick and pop needs to become a legitimate threat in his arsenal. Remember, even a 30% three-point shot is more valuable than his mid-range from before. Does that mean shooting 5 threes a game? No. But shooting 1 or 2 to make the defense honest is important to ensuring his teammates have the space to succeed. Without that, defenses can pack the paint against the Suns and make everyone's job a little tougher. The other vital area he needs to improve is free throw attempts. Deandre Ayton is too big, too fast, and too strong to only shoot 2.3 free throws a game. For this to go up, he needs to be more comfortable dribbling towards the basket and absorbing contact. Here's Devin Booker talking about that exact thing.
I think he's going to be a force. I think with Chris, leading him and communicating with him the whole time alongside myself, drawing gravity, to open things up for him. But, I like when he's aggressive. he can shoot it. He can shoot it in spots, but when he puts it on the ground and puts his body on somebody, he's tough to guard. They're gonna have to foul him. So you've seen spurts to that tonight, and you're gonna continue to see so because we're gonna stay on him and make sure he's being dominating.
That's right, stay on him, Book. If the Suns run actions that heavily include dribble handoffs, he needs to be capable of squaring up and attacking hard with the ball in his hands. The more he develops a 2 or 3 dribble game, the harder it becomes to guard anyone on the Suns. His ability to catch it on the perimeter and attack opens up cutters, shooters, and will increase his free throw attempts. Overall, Deandre is far from a guy that you can just give the ball to and let him work, but it's important to understand that he doesn't need to do that in order to be successful. Understanding a role that includes touches at the rim and ensuring that he's constantly looking at the rim when he catches it there could be all he needs to do to make this team great offensively. Everything else is extra, and if he develops it, the Suns could be contenders.
I think what you're saying, Mike, is that Deandre Ayton has value on offense, but it doesn't need to be his calling card. A lot of the pressure of being a number 1 pick is taken off his shoulders once you realize that he can be one of the best big men in the NBA just through his contributions on the other ends of the court. Let's talk about that now. If Deandre Ayton can't be the anchor of your offense, at least not in his current form, then where is his main value coming from? Where is the argument for him potentially to be a max contract player? The answer, in my opinion, comes all from his defense. Suns fans remember what it was like watching Deandre Ayton as a rookie defensively. There were a couple of highlight games that stuck out, such as when he was the primary assignment on Giannis, but for the most part he struggled on that end. He failed to adequately protect the rim, and he had frequent mental lapses and miscommunications that would lead to easy buckets. It wasn't uncommon to see plays like this out of Ayton, where he failed to contest the shot even though he was right there. And overall, it was very frustrating to watch. Thankfully, the amount of improvement that we saw from Ayton on this end from year 1 to year 2 was exceptional. It was exceptional to the point that I'm now willing to say that Ayton isn't just a solid defender, but he's already a pretty damn good one. And he even has the ceiling on that end to contend for Defensive Player of the Year, but only if he puts in the work. Let's break it down further. When you take a look at year 2 Ayton's box score stats, the first thing you may notice is that he logged considerably more blocks. This was no fluke, as overall he allowed opponents to shoot just 52% within 6 feet of the rim, way down from the 63% he allowed the year before. Ayton's engagement and motor as a drop coverage defender seemed to improve exponentially. On these plays, you can see him stay far below the level of the screen and then swallow up the guard's drives with his body before swatting them at the rim with either hand. When he had to contest at the rim, he stayed vertical far more often than he did in his rookie season, and he also showed much improved weak side rim protection, picking his spots on when to rotate versus when not to rotate a lot better. All of this stuff is a great place to start. While Ayton's 52% allowed at the rim isn't quite on the level of a Rudy Gobert, it's in the tier just after that, alongside guys like Miles Turner, Kristaps Porzingis, and Serge Ibaka. It's proof that he can clearly excel as a drop defender, which is the primary defensive pick and roll coverage of many NBA teams. But as we've seen many times before, drop coverage cannot be the be-all, end-all of your scheme, especially come playoff time. 3-point gunslingers like Damian Lillard and Steph Curry brutalize these types of defenses, as do mid-range maestros like, say, Chris Paul. For Deandre Ayton to be a next-generation modern big, he needs to demonstrate a level of defensive versatility that is incredibly unusual to find in anyone with a 7-foot frame. And luckily, though, this is precisely the reason he was drafted, and he made great strides towards showing this off in year 2. For the next part, we're going to dive into some charts, so just bear with me for a minute. This is a chart of the 25 big men last season who contested the most shots per game, with their 2-point contests plotted against their 3-point contests. The reason I'm showing you this is because by looking at this data, you can get a general feel for the types of defensive systems these players belong to. For example, this tier right here in the bottom right corner comprises your drop defenders, your guys who simply drop back and contest a ton of shots at the rim but rarely play out on the perimeter due to their lack of mobility. For this area, think of a guy like Brook Lopez as the shining example. You also have this tier in the top left of more mobile bigs who may play a combination of power forward in addition to center and who see more 3-point shots as a result. But then, hopefully you notice there's this one outlier point. One big in the entire league who last season saw a healthy amount of shots at the rim, but who also contested more threes than any other big. And if you haven't already guessed it, that player is Deandre Ayton. This is not something we saw routinely from Ayton in year 1, but in my opinion, it's the most exciting development in his game. In year 2, Monty would routinely deploy Ayton in either traps or switches, putting a tremendous amount of faith in Ayton's foot speed to allow him to keep up with guards. This is the stuff that's going to separate him from the rest of the pack, to the point of possibly even being a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. There are currently so many tremendous regular season bigs who are at risk of being played off the floor in the playoffs when switching becomes more of a necessity. If Ayton is already proving that he can handle that type of workload at 22 years old, then he may have a very fine future ahead of him on the defensive end, and again, that's going to be how he earns his money ultimately. Now, it is important to note being a defensive anchor isn't easy, and Ayton isn't there yet. While his on-ball motor has improved tremendously, he can still be a frequent victim of ball watching. Sometimes he'll wander around sort of aimlessly in the paint, or other times his poor reaction time will get the best of him despite his athleticism. The most frustrating aspect about it is that his effort just isn't consistent. When Ayton shows up and the right amount of effort is present, he can be a defensive menace. But there are so many showings, like the other night against the Jazz, for instance, where Ayton blew rotations, missed easy opportunities to contest, and ultimately got into it with his teammates out of frustration. I wish I could say that these are just infrequent blips, but it's been the same story for over 2 years now. Either Ayton has to work on his conditioning, or he just doesn't care the way fans may want him to. But whatever it is, he has too many off nights to be considered a true defensive anchor right now. That simply cannot continue to happen, and it's evidence that all the talent in the world can't stop a rotten mindset from holding him back from attaining his true ceiling. As for the off-ball reaction time type of mistakes, it's impossible to eliminate those completely. After all, Ayton is still a human being and not a shot-blocking robot. But a true defensive anchor needs to come as close to eliminating those miscues as possible. In short, we all know that Ayton is a gifted athlete who can play in multiple different defensive schemes, but can he be the uniting piece, the guy who uplifts all of his teammates and brings everything together on the defensive end? That's what we're going to come closer to finding out in year 3 and beyond.
The most important thing for Deandre Ayton to focus on in his career is defense. For all I talked about when it comes to his offense, if he can become the most versatile defensive center in the league like he's capable of being, that is what will make him great. So Deandre Ayton can provide a lot of value on offense and defense already, but ultimately, his career will be defined by whether or not he's able to reach the potential that his size, skills, and athleticism gives him. If he stays in shape and makes decisions off the court that allow him to stay on the court, being active and having a high motor could ensure that even before he reaches his prime, he can contribute to winning. It's true that it takes time for big men to develop, but Ayton's third season in the league now comes with the expectations of succeeding now and in the playoffs, with even some talk of competing for a championship. If he embraces the dirty work that comes with being a center, absorbing contact, attacking the rim, rebounding, and taking it personal when people score on you, and continues to take the smartest, high-quality shots, he can be part of a great team right now. Don't define Deandre Ayton by his draft position. Define him by what he does on the court, and how what he does off the court affects that. He can control that. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We also have a podcast you can subscribe to now, The Timeline, a Phoenix Suns podcast.